A deafening blast tore through the air. Amidst flames and debris, a former firefighter charged in, defying danger. Little did he know, the life he saved held hope for millions of cancer patients. Michael "Mike" Donovan, or simply Mike as everyone affectionately called him, was once a name that, whenever mentioned, would elicit a chorus of awe mixed with respect from his colleagues at the South Chicago Fire Department. He wasn't born to be a hero, or at least that's what he always thought. His father, a skilled mechanic, only wished for his son to have a peaceful life, a stable job. But the passion for saving lives, it was like an undercurrent, powerful and smoldering, that swept Mike into the fire academy right after high school. He didn't have an overwhelmingly large physique, but he was solid, agile as a panther, and possessed a pair of ash-blue eyes that often glinted with determination, yet deep down concealed an indescribable sadness, a sorrow that seemed only those who had faced the brink of life and death could carry. Mike was a man of few words, his smiles rare, but when he did smile, it was as warm as winter sunshine, enough to dispel the biting cold of long, endless shifts. He was a man of action, not words. Save lives first, talk later. That was his motto, his guiding principle throughout the 15 years he wore the dark blue uniform, the heavy helmet, and charged into infernos without a shred of hesitation. The smell of smoke, the deafening wail of sirens, the terrifying heat of the flames, and the desperate cries for help, all had become an inseparable part of his life, haunting him even in his dreams. He loved his job, loved it enough to trade anything for it, loved the feeling of snatching lives from the clutches of death, loved the tears of joy from victims' families when they were reunited. But then, life isn't always an epic poem. There are losses, pains that can never be compensated, scars etched deep not just on the skin. He was no longer a firefighter. Now Mike Donovan was a delivery man. Birthday cakes of all colors, elaborately decorated wedding cakes. He still retained the meticulous care of a soldier, but the hands that once pulled people from rubble now gently placed cake boxes on the back of his old motorcycle. A cruel twist of fate, yet he accepted it, just as he had always accepted the challenges life threw at him. Sometimes on his delivery routes, passing by a small fire, hearing the distant wail of fire trucks, his heart would still ache. A consuming longing for his profession, an indescribable helplessness. He would stop his bike for a moment, gaze at the column of black smoke rising high into the sky, then silently rev the engine and move on. The past was still there, like an old burn, occasionally throbbing with a dull pain. It was a late autumn afternoon in Chicago. The sun was pale, honey gold, stretching across the increasingly empty streets. Mike was on his way to deliver a special birthday cake. Special because the person who ordered it, a young woman's voice over the phone, had repeatedly emphasized that this cake was incredibly important, meant for someone she deeply respected, someone who had changed the lives of so many people. Mike had merely grunted in acknowledgement. To him, every cake was important because it carried joy, someone's anticipation. He was used to meticulous requests, careful instructions. The two-tiered chocolate cream cake, adorned with deep red sugar roses, sat securely in the insulated box on the back of his motorcycle. The destination was a rather famous French restaurant downtown, Le Rêve Doré, the Golden Dream. He weaved through traffic, the steady hum of his motorcycle engine like a background score to his wandering thoughts. Today, for some reason, his left knee throbbed intermittently, a memento from the time a collapsing ceiling section had pinned him down in a lumber mill fire years ago. That time, he had pulled out 3 workers, but he himself had been trapped. He remembered vividly the suffocating sensation as thick black smoke filled his lungs, the searing heat scorching his skin, and the cracking sound of bones as the weight crashed down. He saved lives, but it took him nearly a year to recover, and his left leg was never the same. It reminded him every day of the price of courage, and it was also the reason he had to leave the fire department, leave the brothers with whom he had faced life and death. An ambulance siren wailed from behind, shattering Mike's train of thought. Reflexively, he steered neatly to the curb, yielding the way. The flashing red and blue lights swept past, then faded into the distance. An indescribable restlessness stirred within him again. He hated this feeling, this sense of helplessness, of being able to do nothing but watch. Someone unlucky, I guess, he thought, then shook his head slightly, trying to dispel the negative thoughts. Le Rêve Doré appeared before him, elegant and ancient with its marble facade and vibrant red geraniums and planters. Mike carefully parked his bike, unstrapped the cake box. He took a deep breath, trying to lighten his mood a bit before stepping inside. The fragrant aroma of butter, garlic, and herbs wafted from the restaurant's kitchen. A warm, inviting scent, so different from the acrid smell of fires he had experienced. He pushed open the heavy wooden door, a small bell attached to it jingling cheerfully. Inside, the atmosphere was cozy with soft yellow lighting, melodious French music, and the cheerful chatter of diners. Everything seemed so peaceful. He approached the reception desk, where a young woman greeted him with a smile. "Hi, I'm here to deliver a birthday cake for Dr. Eris Thorne's reservation," Mike said, his voice even. The receptionist checked her reservation book. "Ah, yes, doctor. Thorne, his table is in the VIP room at the back. Let me show you the way." Mike nodded, following the young woman deeper into the restaurant. He glanced at the diners happily enjoying their meals, couples engaged in intimate conversation. A fleeting sense of loneliness washed over him. How long had it been since he'd had a genuinely enjoyable dinner like this? Since his wife, Sarah, passed away from that damn cancer, his meals had been mere sustenance. Sarah, her image, with her radiant smile, resurfaced, making his heart clench. Her illness was one of the reasons he felt an even deeper hatred for his own powerlessness in the face of tragedy. They stopped before a large oak door. The receptionist knocked gently 3 times. "Dr. Thorne, your birthday cake has arrived." A deep, warm male voice, tinged with a hint of fatigue but still polite, responded from within. "Come in." The receptionist opened the door, tactfully stepping back to let Mike pass. He entered. The room was quite spacious, elegantly decorated with a long table in the center, around which a dozen or so people were seated, likely colleagues or associates of the doctor. All eyes turned to him and the cake in his hands. And then, just as Mike was about to place the cake on the table, a horrifying boom erupted. The ground beneath him shook violently. The lights in the room flickered out. Piercing screams, the shattering of glass, the crashing of furniture. A tremendous force threw Mike forward, sending him sprawling. The cake in his hands flew off somewhere. In a split second, before his consciousness faded into darkness, the overwhelming smell of gas assaulted his nostrils. The experience of a veteran firefighter told him this was a gas explosion, and he, once again, was at the heart of a disaster. The instinct honed through hundreds of battles with fire surged powerfully, overriding the pain spreading through his body. Must save people, that thought flashed, before everything around him plunged into pitch black. A sharp, throbbing pain in his head and shoulder pulled Mike from the thick darkness. He coughed violently, smoke, dust, and the acrid smell of gas flooding his lungs. Around him, moans, cries, and the continued sound of crashing debris. Dimly, through the haze of dust, he saw small flickers of fire starting to ignite from shattered furniture. Instinct, like a switch being flipped, activated the entire response system of a firefighter. The physical pain was temporarily pushed aside, replaced by a chilling clarity. "Escape! Must find an escape route!" The command echoed in his head. He tried to push himself up, his left leg screaming in agony as if it were about to break off. He gritted his teeth, fumbling in the darkness. The dim light from the small fires helped him make out the space. The VIP room was now a chaotic mess. Tables and chairs were overturned, curtains torn, and shards of glass littered the floor. He heard someone sobbing nearby. "Is anyone there? Is anyone hurt?" Mike's voice was hoarse, trying to shout as loud as he could above the noise. "Help! Help me!" a weak female voice responded, mixed with coughs. Mike followed the sound. Under an overturned table, he saw a young woman, the same receptionist who had let him in, with a large piece of wall pinning her leg. She was trying to push it off, but to no avail. "Stay calm, I'll help you," Mike said, his voice trying to sound reassuring despite his heart pounding in his chest. He used all his strength, flexing the muscles in his shoulders and arms, slowly lifting the slab of wall. A sharp pain shot down his spine, but he clenched his jaw, not allowing himself to stop. "Get out! Quickly!" The girl laboriously wriggled free, her eyes wide with fear and gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you. Don't say anything. Find a safe place to hide. There might be a second explosion," Mike warned, his experience telling him so. Gas explosions were often unpredictable. He looked around searching for other victims. He saw a few people trying to crawl out of the room, some with minor injuries, but they seemed conscious. But then, his gaze fell upon a corner of the room where a middle-aged man in a smart suit lay motionless amidst the rubble. His hair was white, his face pale, a streak of blood running from his forehead. Mike recognized him as the man whose deep voice had allowed him into the room earlier. Dr. Eris Thorne, the man for whom the birthday cake was intended. Without hesitation, Mike rushed towards him. Dr. Thorne, can you hear me?" He knelt, checking for a pulse at the man's wrist. It was very weak, almost imperceptible. His head had a rather deep wound, still oozing blood. "Damn it," Mike muttered. He had to get him out of here immediately. The fire was starting to spread faster, the heat intensifying. He tried to lift Dr. Thorne. The man was quite heavy, and Mike's injured leg made the task incredibly difficult. He had to use almost all the strength of his upper body to support him. Every step was agony. Sweat poured down him like rain, mixing with dust and blood. The smoke grew thicker, stinging his eyes. He could no longer see clearly, relying only on his hazy memory of the exit. The sirens of fire trucks and ambulances were beginning to echo from a distance. But to Mike, they seemed to be in another world. Right now, there was only him, the victim on his shoulder, and the fight for life. He recalled his training, his fire escape skills. "Stay low, cleaner air is near the floor." He tried to lower his center of gravity, dragging Dr. Thorne along. The doorway to the VIP room was jammed shut by an overturned cabinet. "No more time," Mike roared in desperation. He looked around, searching for another way out. The window, but it was too high, and seemed to have been warped by the force of the explosion. The flames were licking closer. The heat was unbearable. His skin burned. He felt his lungs were about to burst from lack of oxygen. "Don't give up! Can't give up!" he encouraged himself. He thought of Sarah, of the pain of losing her. He couldn't let another person die in front of him. In a moment of desperation, he saw a small opening in the opposite wall where a large piece of plaster had broken off. Perhaps it was an old ventilation shaft or a weak point in the wall structure. It wasn't large, but maybe enough for one person to squeeze through. This is the only way. He laid Dr. Thorne down, trying to protect his head. Then he used all his remaining strength, using his shoulder, his whole body, to ram against the wall. Excruciating pain shot through his body, once, twice. On the third try, with a sickening crack, bricks began to loosen and then collapse, creating a slightly larger hole. "Enough! Doctor, hang on! We're almost out!" Mike shouted, though he wasn't sure if the man could still hear him. He wrapped his arms around Dr. Thorne, trying to push him through the hole first. It was an incredibly difficult task. The doctor's body was limp, unresponsive. Blood from his head wound soaked Mike's shirt. Finally, with a superhuman effort, he managed to push half of the doctor's body through. Just then, an even louder boom came from the kitchen area. The ceiling began to shake violently. Large chunks of plaster rained down. Another explosion, Mike realized. He knew he didn't have much time. He had to get Dr. Thorne completely out, then himself. He used his shoulder to forcefully push the rest of Dr. Thorne's body through the opening. Just as the doctor's body cleared the hole, a large section of the ceiling above where Mike stood came crashing down. He only had time to let out a cry before everything went black. The horrific pain in his back and left leg overwhelmed him. This time, it wasn't just the old knee injury. He felt as if his entire lower body had been crushed. His consciousness flickered. Sarah's smiling face appeared to him, then faded. "At least, I saved him," was Mike's last thought before he completely lost consciousness. amidst the fire and rubble, his hand still tightly gripping Dr. Thorne's wrist, who lay safer on the other side of the breached wall. Blinding white light and the steady beeping of machines were the first things Dr. Eris Thorne perceived as he slowly regained consciousness. His head throbbed agonizingly, and a heavy feeling enveloped his entire body. He tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids were leaden. It took a moment before he could clearly see the hospital ceiling, then the complex medical equipment surrounding his bed. A young nurse hurried in when she saw him move. "Dr. Thorne, you're awake. How are you feeling?" Eris tried to speak, but his throat was parched. "Water?" he rasped. The nurse quickly helped him take a few sips. It felt a little better. "What? What happened?" Eris asked, memories of that horrific afternoon beginning to flood back, fragmented and chaotic. The birthday party, the laughter, then an explosion, darkness. "The restaurant where you were celebrating your birthday had a severe gas explosion, doctor. You were brought here unconscious. Fortunately, you're out of critical danger," the nurse explained, her voice gentle. "You have a head injury and some burns, but nothing life-threatening. You were very lucky." "Lucky," Eris repeated, an unsettling feeling rising within him. He remembered being thrown, then a void in his memory. How did he get out? Who saved him? A vague image flashed in his mind. A man, a determined face blurred by smoke and dust, trying to pull him, a hand gripping his wrist, a resolute hold. Were others seriously injured?" Eris asked, his voice anxious. "The people with me?" "A few people were injured, but no one as critically as you, doctor. The rescue teams worked very efficiently." The nurse smiled reassuringly, but Aris felt something was amiss. That grip, it was too real. Over the following days in the hospital, Eris gradually recovered. Colleagues and friends visited, recounting the chaos of the explosion. They told him he was found in a corridor behind the kitchen, near a hole in the wall, next to another man who had shielded him with his own body from falling debris after the second explosion. That man was the cake delivery guy. Eris's heart clenched. The cake delivery guy. He had only come to deliver a birthday cake, yet he was caught in this tragedy, and worse, he had saved Eris's life. How is he?" Eris urgently asked a close colleague who had been at the scene after the incident. The colleague was silent for a moment, his expression heavy. "Mike Donovan, that's his name, a former firefighter. He's very badly injured, Oris. His spine and left leg were severely damaged by a large ceiling section that fell on him as he was trying to get you out. The doctors say there's a chance he might not walk again." The news struck Eris like a hammer blow. Not walk again. A firefighter, a man used to moving, acting, saving lives, might now be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. All because of him, for saving him. A profound sense of guilt and gratitude, so deep it was painful, overwhelmed Eris. He remembered the words of the woman who ordered the cake, that it was for someone who changed the lives of so many people. He, Eris Thorne, the brilliant scientist who had dedicated his life to researching a breakthrough cancer drug, a drug that could save millions, was now saved by a humble cake deliveryman, a silent hero. The irony of fate left him speechless. As soon as his health allowed, the first thing Eris did was request to visit Mike Donovan. He had to see the man who had sacrificed so much for him. As his wheelchair was pushed towards Mike's hospital room, Eris's heart pounded. He took a deep breath and then signaled the nurse to wheel him in. Mike lay on the bed, his face gaunt and pale. His eyes were closed, but he didn't seem to be asleep. White bandages were wrapped around his chest and abdomen. His left leg was immobilized in a complex metal brace. Seeing the once strong, agile man now lying motionless, Eris felt his throat tighten. He had seen many patients in his career, but he had never felt so helpless and heartbroken. Eris signaled the nurse to leave him alone with Mike. He slowly wheeled himself closer to the bed. "Mr. Donovan." "Mike," Eris began, his voice trembling. Mike's eyes slowly opened. His gaze was tired, surprised to see Eris. He tried to force a weak smile. "Dr. Thorne, are you all right?" Mike's voice was hoarse. Hearing that question, Eris couldn't hold back anymore. Tears welled up in the eyes of the usually composed scientist. He had prepared so many things to say, words of thanks, words of apology, but now they all caught in his throat. He could only look at Mike, the man who had saved his life, the man who was now enduring these severe consequences. I, I'm all right, Mike. Thanks to you. It's all thanks to you, Eris said, his voice breaking. I, I don't know what to say to express my gratitude. You saved me. You gave me a second chance at life. Mike looked at Eris, his ash-blue eyes glinting with understanding. It was the right thing to do, Doctor. Anyone in my position would have done the same. Not everyone has your courage and sacrifice, Mike. Eris shook his head. You were a firefighter, weren't you? The instinct to save people is in your blood. A sad smile flickered across Mike's lips. Used to be, Doctor. Now, probably not anymore. He glanced down at his immobile legs. Despair flashed briefly before being quickly hidden. Seeing that, Eris's heart felt like it was being squeezed. He knew he had to do something. Mike's sacrifice couldn't be in vain. Mike, Eris said, his voice firmer, I owe you my life, and I will not let your sacrifice be meaningless. The drug I'm researching, it's about to complete its final trial phase. It can help millions of people. And you, Mike, you are the one who helped me continue that work. You are a hero too, in your own way. Eris told Mike about his research, about the sleepless nights in the lab, about the hope of bringing life to cancer patients, the disease that had taken Mike's beloved wife. He spoke of his dream, of a world free from the pain caused by cancer. As Eris spoke, he saw a faint glimmer of light in Mike's tired eyes. An invisible connection seemed to form between the two men from completely different worlds, yet bound by fate through a tragedy and an act of heroism. Your work, it's extraordinary, Doctor, Mike whispered. Sarah, my wife, she died of lung cancer. If there had been a drug like that sooner, his voice choked. Eris placed a hand on Mike's shoulder, a gentle, empathetic touch. I'm so sorry, Mike. I truly am. But perhaps your sacrifice will help others avoid the pain you and Sarah went through. And I will do everything in my power to make that happen. Do you believe me? Mike looked directly into Eris's eyes for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I believe you, Doctor. In that moment, within the four walls of the hospital, amidst pain and loss, a new hope was kindled. A silent promise was made. Dr. Eris Thorne's saved life was no longer just his own. It also carried the weight of gratitude and responsibility towards the man who saved him, and the hope for the future of millions of others. News of Mike Donovan's courageous act, the former firefighter who defied danger to save the renowned scientist Dr. Eris Thorne, quickly spread throughout Chicago and then across the United States. Newspapers and television stations all featured his story, praising his bravery and silent sacrifice. People called him the cake delivery hero, a simple nickname that encapsulated all their respect and admiration. The Chicago Fire Department, where Mike had dedicated 15 years of his life, held a special ceremony to honor him. Though he no longer wore the uniform, that day Mike, dressed impeccably in a suit and seated in his wheelchair, still exuded the resolute air of a soldier. Dr. Eris Thorne was personally present, standing beside him throughout the ceremony. When the fire chief presented Mike with a Medal of Honor for his extraordinary bravery, the entire auditorium rose in a standing ovation. His former colleagues, young firefighters, looked at him with eyes full of pride and admiration. Tears were shed, not of sadness, but of emotion before such a shining example of compassion and sacrifice. In his speech, Dr. Thorne didn't talk much about himself. He dedicated most of his time to speaking about Mike, about how his actions had changed his life. In that moment of life and death, Eris's deep voice resonated through the hall. When all hope seemed lost, Mike Donovan appeared like a guardian angel. He didn't just save my life, he saved the research to which my colleagues and I have dedicated our entire lives. That research, I promise, will soon bring hope to millions of cancer patients worldwide, and every single life saved in the future will carry a part of the grace of this extraordinary man, Mike Donovan. Eris looked at Mike, who was trying to suppress his emotions. You may have lost your ability to walk, Mike, Eris continued, his voice trembling slightly, but you have given me and so many others, the legs to continue walking on the path of hope. You are the embodiment of courage, of selflessness, and your story will forever be an inspiration to us all. After the ceremony, Mike's life changed significantly. He no longer delivered cakes. Dr. Thorne, with the help of philanthropists and a charitable foundation he established, ensured Mike a comfortable and well-provided life. More importantly, Eris invited Mike to participate in a community project funded by his foundation, a project aimed at supporting and inspiring firefighters injured in the line of duty, as well as assisting the families of fire victims. Though confined to a wheelchair, Mike found a new purpose in life. He shared his story, his experiences as a firefighter, and lessons about resilience and never giving up hope. His voice, once hoarse from smoke, now carried powerful messages that touched the hearts of many. Sometimes on weekend afternoons, Dr. Thorne would visit Mike. They would sit on the porch, drink tea, and talk. Not about lofty science or horrific fires, but about everyday things, small joys and sorrows. Eris would tell Mike about the progress of the new drug, about the first patients showing positive signs of recovery. Mike would listen, a rare but warm smile gracing his lips. He no longer dwelled on the past, on what he had lost. He knew his sacrifice had not been in vain. One day, Dr. Thorne brought Mike a photograph. It was a picture of a little girl smiling brightly, hugging a teddy bear. "This is Emily," Eris said, his voice thick with emotion. "One of the first patients to be treated experimentally with the new drug. She had end-stage leukemia. Doctors had almost given up hope, but now she's in complete remission. She has a future." Mike looked at the photograph, then at Eris. His ash-blue eyes shone with an indescribable joy. "You did it, doctor. You really did it." Eris nodded, his own eyes welling up. "We did it, Mike. Both of us." They sat in silence for a long time, looking out at the small garden in front of Mike's house, where sunflowers stretched towards the sun. Life went on, with its challenges and its miracles. And the story of the brave former firefighter and the brilliant scientist would continue to be told as a testament to the power of kindness, of sacrifice, and of hope that never dies. The flame of courage that Mike had ignited on that fateful night now not only saved one life, but also fueled millions of other hopes around the world, illuminating the path to a brighter future. And somewhere in the laughter of rescued children, in the happy tears of their loved ones, was the image of Mike Donovan, the silent hero who proved that even in the direst circumstances, a small act from the heart can create great things.